Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and listening. We have Larry on his mountaintop. And, boy, I'll tell you what, news is overwhelming as far as what's really going on. Again, much of it blacked out in the mainstream media press. Very few comments going on about what's happening in the Middle East. Before we begin, and Larry, I want you to chime in anywhere. I got to issue a very strong warning here that I feel we are about to enter into the time of Jacob's trouble, that the evidence of that time of trouble for the United States and for Israel is piling up and piling up and piling up as far as signs, timelines, events, etc., etc. And one of the big reasons that this may be it, and there's a lot of reasons why, as I've explained before, the 120-year, the 100-year, the 70-year, the 50-year timelines. I put out a video called the Omega Code, which Larry has seen, explaining how all of this comes together in key years for Israel since the 120-year. The foundation of Israel, of course, was the Jewish Congress back in 1897. And as for 120 years, we have 10-year, 20-year, 40-year, 50-year, 70-year periods of time within that 120 years that all fall on very key and important dates on Israel. Conclusion being that 2017 was the end of the 120 years, and then we would go into Messianic times, which would be 2018, 2019. Excuse me. So basically, here we are. And we are now at the 5th. And if you include the 5th, we have 7 days to 9/11, including the 11th. We have a comet, a very strange comet, actually. It appears on 9/10 and 9/11 at its closest point, and it's a 666 comet. It's also a 777 comet, so it applies both to mankind and it applies to the Lord in His completeness. And the name of this comet is very, very interesting. I can't pronounce it, and I'm going to try, but one of the names behind the comet, one of the guys that discovered it, the name actually means following after, or what we could say, after what. And you find out because the name also has a connection directly to Jacob, the Israeli name of Jacob, which would mean Jacob's trouble is following after. In other words, this comet is punctuating the time of Jacob's trouble at a time when everything else is dovetailing in together. And what's also interesting, I just found out, and I haven't been able to vet it, is that 9/11 also is Islam's New Year, where it begins. So we're heading into some trouble here. And September 11th, if the new moon is actually sighted on the 10th, and I have a moon chart, which it appears likely it will be, would be the last trumpet blown for Feast of Trumpets. And that would be on 9/11. Now, 11 means confusion, disintegration, judgment, and disorder. Larry, what do you think of these congressional hearings? If that doesn't kind of prove that, go ahead.
Yeah, that's absolutely total disorder. I've watched it all day very closely. I really didn't want to watch it, but I watched it just to see what was said, and what I can glean from it is there was a report that there was somebody seen giving out money out of a bag to a lot of these protesters to go inside the hearing of Kavanaugh and actually disrupt it. And this has gone on all day long. And Stuart, it's amazing to me, the only reason that they're being ejected from this, in other words, the police is arresting them for disorderly conduct, big deal, and taking them outside. And it appears to me to be that it's got to be with the permission of the Democrats and the Republicans that this disorder is happening, or you could actually say this disruption and disorder is very timely, and I kind of like your opinion on that.
Well, I think it is. It's extremely timely. Here we have McCain, who was deep state, anti-American, even though he claimed to be pro-American, dies, and his funeral lasts for, depends on when you want to start it, but 7 or 8 days. And then we have this show for everybody to see in America of these congressional hearings showing total disorder. Is this a warning of what's to come about for America? Is it a 7-day warning? Well, it could well be. It seems like we're getting a number of 7-day warnings for all of this to occur around the world, actually, particularly the war. Then we had an earthquake in Japan, 6.7. Some have lowered it now to a 6.6, which is actually kind of worse in view of the comet, which is a 666 comet. And that happened in Japan, and that is a 7-day warning. If you start with the 5th and you count 7 days, you're at the 11th. You include those. Now, the reason I think that's a warning is because the Lord has used earthquakes before as a major warning to the world. And a long time ago, I got a phone call in the morning. I think I've told you this story, Larry. But I got a phone call one morning, very early, 6 o'clock, 5:30, I can't remember when it was. And this voice on the other end said, "The Lord told me to call you. I have a message for you." I had been thinking about when America was going to go into judgment, and I thought that perhaps the Mount St. Helens blow-up was the signal for it, but evidently not. This person said that I was going to see a warning, and the entire American people would see a warning that was coming immediately, and it was the beginning of the judgment against the United States, and went on to explain that the judgments would not be that severe at first, but there would be 3 little judgments, then a long period of normalcy, and then another 3 would come, and then a little shorter period of normalcy, and then 3 more would come, and so on, like birth pangs, each one getting a little more severe. And it's come to pass exactly as this person said. Well, that afternoon, as I walked out of the office, TV was on, and the earthquake struck at Candlestick Park. Now, if you go into the book of Revelation, Jesus Christ walks in the midst of the candlesticks. Revelation, look it up, chapters 1 and 2, actually 3, because 4 is the end of the church age. Anyway, that was a warning of judgments, and since that earthquake, things have happened exactly as I was told. So that means that this earthquake that struck Japan, which is total 13, 6.7, is most likely a 7-day warning of something that is coming. What do you think about this earthquake? It seems like this thing kind of struck out of the blue.
Well, it did. It kind of shocked me, actually. I saw it post up real quick, and then I went and double-checked it and went ahead and posted it. it really came out of nowhere, basically. But, of course, it's in the Pacific Basin, and that's where a lot of rattling and movements are going on.
This is kind of interesting. This is from Hal Turner's website, going into this earthquake a little bit. We can hit on it a little bit later. He says the quake took place at a depth of 39 kilometers and was widely felt, but they weren't thinking that a tsunami was going to take place. But this is what's interesting. The last time a sudden strong earthquake near this magnitude struck was just one day before a much stronger 9.0 struck, causing the tsunami that killed thousands and caused 3 nuclear power reactors to melt down and explode in Fukushima. And so what's very, very interesting is that the number 6.7 is man's number, and 7 is the number of completion. And it fell 7 days, actually, before 9/11, which is kind of curious to me. But, maybe that's just my conspiratorial mind operating. Then the other thing I wanted to bring out is, remember the Feast of Trumpets. At the end of the Feast of Trumpets, which is, according to a lot of experts, has to be a time of the bride being removed. And I can't claim that that's true, but this is what a number of people really do believe. And it sounds like it. If you go and examine all the evidence that is given to us on Feast of Trumpets and how Israel celebrates it, it is definitely a picture of the rapture, which would mean that Tu B'Av, or the love feast, is simply a symbolic feast pointing to Feast of Trumpets. Because remember, Tu B'Av is actually the 8th and last feast of the year for Israel, using Israel's calendar. And Trumpets is the first feast. So you go from Tu B'Av, the 8th, over to the first, which is Trumpets. So in other words, the Tu B'Av love feast, or Valentine's Day, or the time when the bride is selected out, is very symbolic of what's coming a little bit later. So this is kind of interesting. And anyway, let's see, what else we got? Okay, the last trumpet, of course, would be blown on 9/11. It'd be towards afternoon, I guess, because their days start, I believe, at sundown, and therefore they would end at sundown the next day. And then they would enter into the next one. So Israel on 9/11 would have actually entered into 2019. And 9/11 actually is the phone number for emergencies. That's what you call it, 911. Isn't that interesting? I want everybody, if they would, to look up Psalm 11:9, which is a 9/11 in reverse. Now, this is very, very interesting, because that psalm is about Jesus Christ and the Word. It's the longest chapter in the Bible. There are 593 chapters after it, concluding with Revelation. At the end of the book of Revelation. That adds up to 17, and 17 is victory. The psalm is divided up into 22 sections, which is an 11:11. There are 176 verses, 8 verses in each section. And 8, of course, is the number of a new beginning. So this psalm, which is located very close to the center of the Bible, is all about Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. Verse 119, or 11:9 of Psalm 119 reads, "Thou puttest away all the wicked of the earth, like dross." I guess you'd pronounce that. What do you think, Larry? I mean, that kind of sounds kind of deadly, because that's exactly what the 7-year tribulation is for, is to put away all the wicked. and cleanse those that are going to be saved.
Wow, I think that's extremely interesting.
You still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can now. You dropped off there for a minute.
Okay.
Now, I want you to listen to this one, everyone. Joel 2:16, because it's talking about the Feast of Trumpets. It's just not worded exactly that way, but that's what it's talking about. Joel 2:16, gather the people, sanctify the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children, and those that suck the breasts. Let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber, and the bride out of her closet. That's the taking of the church of Jesus Christ. He's the bridegroom, the church is the bride. Why is it at this point in time, which is towards a Feast of Trumpets? And it's just before a war or just after a war. Either way you want to look at it, I guess you could look at it either way. So I think we are headed into a time of really, really bad things. And the more we get into this thing, I think the more you're going to see it. Now, the problem is that you have to read in Matthew, I can't remember where it's Matthew 7, 22, 23, 24, somewhere in there, where Jesus sets aside a vast number of Christians and sends them away because they did not do what Jesus Christ told them to do. They believed the false teachers, preachers, evangelists, and who told them they were saved when they were not. I don't want to get into that right now. I don't have time. That would take 2 hours to prove to you that that's absolutely true, and that's why Jesus warned about it. That's why Peter warned about it. And but for the real believers, for in the time of trouble, that's Daniel's 70th week. For in the time of trouble, he, the Lord, will hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me, and he shall set me upon a rock. Remember when Jesus was said he was the rock? And he gave the parable of the person who builds his house upon the sand, and he qualified as to what he meant. He said, those that hear my words and do not do them. It's like a person that builds his house upon the sand. And when the storm came, the house fell, and great was the fall of it. Then he said, those who build their foundation upon the rock, the storm will come, the winds will blow, but the house will stand. Isn't it interesting that he uses this term in Psalm 27:5? He shall set me upon a rock. If you want to find bedrock, what do? You dig down underneath the sand until you hit bedrock. And that's where you anchor your house. Then in Isaiah 26 through 21, come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut the door about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation, which is Daniel's 70th week, be overpassed. So it's all very, very interesting in the amazing number of 911. I'll just do a little bit, and then we got to get on to other things. The Tower of Babel, Genesis 11:9, a reverse 911, appears to be a parallel event in history to the 9/11/2001 World Trade Center attack. Isn't that interesting? So the Bible shows us 911 is more than likely a God-defined number, symbolic of the Lord's return to protect his people. Take them out of here, hide them in his pavilion, as it were, which I just read to you. Lord's judgment on nations who have turned away from him. Now, Larry, we know where America sits on turning away, don't we?
Oh, yeah. And I was thinking as you were sharing that, Stuart, you were talking about those that had not really been serious about following him, how he sent them away. I thought that sounds like the great falling away, if you will. And we've always thought of it as like it was their decision to leave him. But actually, it appears, if what you read is accurate, that he actually makes himself unavailable anymore to them that won't follow him.
Well, it's kind of interesting because if you read the Song of Solomon, and I'm no expert in the Song of Solomon, but I was listening to a guy who is, and it was very, very interesting what he had to say. He said the Song of Solomon is being misunderstood for what it really is. The Song of Solomon is about the church, and the church is laying inside. She's got the window and the doors locked, and she's sleeping. And her love, who is Jesus Christ, comes knocking on the door. And he ends up actually beating on the door. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Come with me, come with me. Well, by the time she wakes up, gets her clothes on, and ambles over to the door, he's already gone. Remember the parable of the virgins?
Yeah.
Those who were ready. There is a great blessing, folks, for those who are really watching and watching for the signs. The signs are everywhere. And they started long before the sign of 923 in 2017, the star sign. That star sign, likewise, interestingly enough, had a comet with it. Actually, it had two comets with it. One was called the Conception Comet, which proved that 911 or that 923 star sign was actually the same, the one in the book of Revelation. I don't think there's any question anymore. Looking back and analyzing all that, that was a valid 923 star sign was the sign of Revelation chapter 12. And it also had a comet on 9/23, which was the Feast of Trumpets, just under her feet, just under Virgo's feet. Isn't it interesting? About a year later, on Feast of Trumpets, we have another comet coming through, and it's on 9/10, 9/11 this year, Feast of Trumpets. It's at its closest point. It has an orbit of 6.6 years. Its closest approach is 6 astronomical units from planet Earth at its closest approach. 6, 6, 6. And that's just not coincidental. The Lord is telling you the trouble is coming, and that mankind's number 666, actually the number of the Antichrist, is that the Antichrist is rising. So we are going to see some stuff you wouldn't even believe. We'll get into what's going on in the Middle East, but we're going to see stuff you would not ever believe is going to start happening. In fact, I believe it's already happening, don't you, Larry? I mean, my word, we've had all kinds of stuff going on here.
Yeah, let me run a couple by you real quick before we switch to something else.
Yes.
Breaking Israel news today, and I ran it by you earlier. They've got a headline out that says Friends of Zion Museum brings Jews and Christians together during a period of repentance, leading to Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year. And actually, I believe the Jewish New Year begins this coming Sunday night, I believe. But what do you think about that, the timing of that, plus the new news that's coming out that I sent you a link to of the new red heifer that's born in Israel, no blemishes?
Well, yeah, that is another thing that we have to mention to everyone. The ashes of the red heifer, a lot of people are not familiar with it. But the ashes of the red heifer are necessary for Israel to begin her sacrificial worship services for the temple. Actually, it's very symbolic of the Lord Jesus Christ. The red heifer has to be without blemish, without spot. Every hair on it has to be red. There can be no white hair or anything like that. It has to be totally red. As I understand it, Larry, and you can correct me on this one, that people have attempted to ship red heifers over to Israel only to be blocked. So this red heifer came from embryos, as I understand it. It got snuck past the authorities, I guess. Clever of the Lord to do that, which is another indication that we're here. The ashes of the red heifer are purification ashes. And you have to go into Leviticus and Deuteronomy and whatnot to really get a grip on what the red heifer means. It's very, very important. And what's even more important is that the article appeared as a 7-day warning. It came out today, a 7-day warning. It's amazing. We're getting these warnings about Israel, about the tribulation period, about the time of Jacob's trouble, and a very possible removal of the bride of Christ at any time. May not be exactly on 9/11, although a lot of experts claim it will be. It could go through all the way to Tabernacles, the Lord with us. So we'll just have to wait and see. But here's a few more 911s. Nehemiah 9:11 speaks of a flood. Does not appear coincidence that this 9:11 verse is directly related to the numeric reference to Exodus 14:21, which is the 1911th Bible verse. You divided the sea before them, so they passed through the midst of the sea on dry ground, and their pursuers you hurled into the depth like a stone in raging waters. What's that about? It's about the Lord delivering his people out of Egypt. Well, the world now, I think Larry would agree with this, the world now, and especially the United States, would have to be classified as Egypt. What do you think, Larry?
Oh, that's, yeah, I remember a classic song. I can't remember his name right now, but he was killed in a plane crash, but he actually wrote a song about coming out of Egypt and indicating the you know, that happened to the Middle East. However, a new Egypt, if you will, or a type of Egypt, of Babylon in America, you know, he actually talked about that in the song. So that's incredibly interesting, Stuart.
Yeah, there's no question that the people are going to be delivered, and they're going to be delivered at a time when nobody would believe it because they're not watching, number one. And I have to say to everyone out there, you know, we went through this before. We've gone through it a number of times. And what it does, it kind of makes people falter in their belief. And they go, here we go again, and nothing's going to happen, and nothing's going to happen. Well, the Lord says that though the vision tarry, wait for it, it shall surely come. And it's going to come at a time when no one really believes it's going to happen. And here again, when you got the 9/11, this is Israel being taken out of Egypt and walking across a miracle deliverance, actually. Exodus 19:11. Get this one. Speaks of the Lord coming down before all the people. Of course, he is coming both to save the people and judge the rest of them. So it is, let them be ready for the third day. For on the third day, the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Remember the Pope shaking hands with Obama in 2015? Remember all the hoopla about Feast of Trumpets on 2015 and absolutely nothing happened? We did have that handshake. What's 3 years later? Here we are, 3 years later. Hebrews 9:11, when Christ appeared as a high priest of the good things to come, he entered through the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this creation. Isn't that kind of interesting? Now when you look at what Feast of Trumpets means, and it's interesting that Larry brought up this article on repentance, because repentance is probably the dirtiest word ever in modern Christianity. They don't talk about repentance. They don't even know what it means. It also means the beginning of the year or the birthday of the world, the awakening blast. In other words, you better wake up. So it is possible that 9/11 is the midnight cry, and the rapture comes soon after that. Anyway, it also means Day of Judgment. It also means Coronation Day of the Messiah. These are all the meanings that have of what trumpets actually is remembered as. Day of Remembrance. Also means time of Jacob's trouble. Birth pangs of the Messiah. It also means wedding ceremony. Also means resurrection of the dead. Also means the last trump. Also means the hidden day. Not known. Remember, Paul said it was a mystery, that the rapture of the church was a mystery. It's hidden. It also means, and here's the big one, the opening of the gates. What do you think of that one, Larry?
Yeah, that is really interesting.
Because you and I have talked about the doors, and we never really equated it to a portal until, a couple, 3 years ago maybe. And yet, here it is. Opening of the gates is the opening of the door. Read Revelation chapter 4. And the door opens. And you got to remember this one, too. Noah knew the year. We had the star sign in 2017. A year later, we have trumpets. A 1-year warning to the church, possibly. And Isaiah chapter 9, 8 through 21. Folks, write that one down. Isaiah 9, verse 8 through 21 is all about the 9/11 event and the rebuilding, and a warning to Jacob about the time of Jacob's trouble. And Jeremiah 11:9, 9/11, a conspiracy is found among the men of Judah. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
Jeremiah 9:11, I will make Jerusalem heaps, a den of dragons. Daniel 9:11, Israel has transgressed. The curse is poured out upon them. They have sinned against their God. I'm paraphrasing it. Then Zechariah 9:11, I have sent forth thy prisoners out of the pit, wherein there is no water. Now, if you really study that, earth is a pit with no divine love in it, which is the code word for the water. That's what it means generally in a lot of places. And the prisoners have been removed or taken out of the earth. So, all of this is very, very fascinating to me. What do you think, Larry? I mean, this is really, really interesting.
Well, it's interesting also, Stuart, with the fact that, did you see the latest Hal Turner false flag alert today? Isn't it interesting the time frame involved in that false flag could possibly be September the 8th through the 12th?
Yeah, that is fascinating, because a false flag can come at any time. Remember, what was his name? He testified before Congress. He was Secretary of Defense, Bill Cohen. And he said that he never qualified who they were. Obviously, Illuminati, deep state, the powers that be, who have all these black operations where they've all this high technology, have the ability to set off volcanoes, create earthquakes, modify the weather, etc., etc., etc. So here we go. I mean, they can do it at any time, and we don't know what kind of a false flag it could be, or even if there will be one. Just seems kind of odd where it's coming. And when you analyze, we're going to get in now to the war that's going on over there in Israel. And this thing is increasing rapidly, and we're going to have a world war, it looks like, unless cool hands prevail. But it doesn't look like they're going to, with all the rhetoric and all the threats that have been made. So anyway, just to finish off a little bit of this, Israel was born on May 14th. On 9/11 this year is 120 days, and 120 is man's allotted years. It is a divinely appointed time of waiting. We're up with it. On let's see what the next one is. The 9/11 was Rosh Hashanah, which we've already gone over. So it falls, I'm not sure exactly, people can look this up if they want, 11% of the time, I guess, of a week falls always on a Tuesday. And guess where September 11th is? It's on a Tuesday. So Islam should invade Israel soon after the rapture, or maybe before. So the 11th hour, speaking about 9/11, is a phrase meaning at the last moment. And the word travail in gematria, which I don't subscribe to, actually means 9/11. So Here we go. I mean, there's a lot of things that are entering into all of this. And the number of days from 9/11 to December 31st is 111 days. So we're getting all these signs, we're getting all these numbers. Do they mean anything? Well, I guess heads up. What do you think?
Well, it's certainly incredibly interesting, the time frame, and like you said, all of this seems to be coming together right now in the just the very time frame that we've been talking about for a number of weeks.
Yeah, it's all coming together here in these. This is going to be very interesting the next 7 days. Extremely interesting. There's a hurricane forming. They call it Florence. And I guess they feel that on the 15th, maybe 16th, 17th, that this thing could become a Category 5 and strike the East Coast of the United States. So it's kind of interesting that the Bible talks about Antichrist coming in as a flood. And it seems to be a flood of offense as well as a flood of war and a flood possibly of even water. Nikki Haley, what's the scoop on that, Larry? You said something about she warned Russia?
Yeah. Well, I was going to mention, I don't know if you had time to look at my blog today, but it's interesting about the time frame of this water coming in, or if you will, the Atlantic hurricane possibly moving to the East Coast. You've got, what we've talked about for some time, but there are headlines today on mainstream media that Obama is coming back and has stepped out onto the stage, and his wife will be out there with him and crossing the country. And this is the timing couldn't be more incredible, actually.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. So it's coming right at the same time. Here's what Nikki Haley said at the UN, I guess. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, if Russia continues bombing Idlib, we will get involved. Is that basically what she said?
Well, the Pentagon yesterday, Stuart, warned Russia that it was unacceptable, the bombing that was going on, or the attack, on Idlib. But then Nikki Haley at the UN today announced that we would become involved if they continued this, because Russia bombed, all last night, I suppose, and, bombed Idlib. And then, of course, Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, he came back and said, that we had no need to get involved with Idlib because this was a sovereign Russian military operation, and that if we interfered with that there would be consequences.
So we've got Russia already bombing. We've got Israel bombing. We've got Turkey coming in. What's the latest on the Turkey operations coming in?
Oh, they're moving. It's beginning to reveal more and more equipment and tanks, armor, troops down towards Idlib. And the background chatter says that the U.S. is trying to get in the way and stop the Turks, but we don't know what that means.
Wow. So I know Russia alerted its people several days ago that prepare for direct confrontation with the United States. It sounds like Putin already knows that we are headed into World War III. And I do remember a couple of years ago he warned the press that World War III was inevitable. It was coming, and that they should not be making light of it. And I remember Obama making a statement. He couldn't stop World War III. It's almost as though they already know that it's a planned war to bring in the new world order, bring up the United Nations to full power, and here we go in the final 7 years. It's amazing what's really going on. And here's another headline. Trump warns Assad against reckless attack on Syria militant-held Idlib. Well, he's involved too. Aren't Syrian aircraft bombing as well?
No, it's just the Russians are bombing, but the Syrians are bringing up their tanks. They're massing their tanks and their armor, their artillery. They've used some artillery against Idlib, but the background chatter is that the Syrians and the Iranians, along with the Syrian rebels, etc., are forming a massive attack. And when they attack, they say that they're going to put an end to Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the U.S.-led rebels, and terrorist groups in that country. And my opinion is, since way before, when Obama came in, remember ISIS was formed and grew and really became relevant. And isn't it interesting that we're still trying to protect these folks? And don't we know that Al-Qaeda and ISIS, et cetera, are terrorists? Isn't that interesting, Stuart?
Well, I think it's proving who the United States deep state really is. Now, whether Trump has any say over this, I'm beginning to doubt that he does. But here's what he tweeted. President Bashar al-Assad of Syria must not recklessly attack Idlib province. The Russians and Iranians would be making a grave humanitarian mistake to take part in this potential human tragedy. So we're trying to take the high road when, in fact, we're on the low road. The United States has no business in Syria, folks. We were not invited there. We're in total violation of international law being there. Russia, on the other hand, was invited in by Assad to assist, and now Iran has been invited in by Assad to assist and rebuild. In fact, they just signed a treaty for it. Iran is going to build, I think it was 3 military bases. One appears to be very, very close to Israel. Now, there's no way Israel's going to allow that. And it appears to me, Larry, that Israel is going after not only Syrian forces, but Israeli forces as well. And I remember a remark, I think it was the Prime Minister, who's not the Prime Minister, but the chief of the military, who said that they would go after Iran anywhere, In other words, it's not just Syria anymore. It could be in Iraq. It could be in Iran itself. Have I got that right?
Yeah, what you said Israeli forces, but what you meant was that they're not only going after Iranian forces in Syria, they've now begun to attack the Syrian locations, and that appears to be true. Now, I don't have a lot of confirmation on that. What we're hearing the latest is that there was another attack in Syria by Israeli warplanes, and apparently, if true, Syrians possibly fired from the Russian base at Tartus a ground-to-air missile that struck one of the Israeli warplanes that finally landed injured in Incirlik base, the NATO base in Turkey. And then is when there were reports of a number of Israeli warplanes over Lebanon, and then we began to hear about explosions in Syria. And the word was that Israel had begun to attack Syrian as well as Iranian bases. So
the war is on, basically, unless there's some sort of peace deal.
Yeah, I would just say that sounds like war to me.
Yeah. It seems like that the warning that Trump gave to Russia and everybody else, Russia has more or less given us the finger because they continued to bomb. They didn't pay any attention to it. And with that warning you just told us about of Lavrov, if you come after us, you're going to have a direct confrontation with us. Kind of interesting.
The most interesting thing, too, Stuart, and I posted it recently, the Sartre-Fall map of the so-called Russian Circle of War, or war zone, actually is extremely accurate. And what's interesting is a lot of those ships that are involved, and there's a mass of those ships, there's up to 50, I've heard, in that region. A lot of those are nuclear vessels. They're armed with nukes.
Wow. Well, here's a statement that Netanyahu made. Standing next to a secretive Israeli atomic reactor, earlier in the week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatened to wipe out his enemies in a speech that many will see as a Jewish state breaking its long silence over the possession of nuclear weapons. The Likud leader warned that it has the means to destroy its enemies. Those who threaten to wipe us out put themselves in a similar danger and in any event will not achieve their goal. Isn't that an interesting comment? Then Iran says that Netanyahu is a warmonger and the threat of atomic annihilation against the Islamic Republic was denounced as a beyond shameless in the gall. Iran, this is what they claimed. Iran, a country without nuclear weapons, is threatened with atomic annihilation by a warmonger standing next to an actual nuclear weapons factory, Iran replied. What do you think? Rhetoric is heating up.
I would think if I was in Iran that Netanyahu standing next to a nuclear reactor in Israel claiming that fact would be a clue. What's so interesting, though, and they know it, that sitting around underwater all over that region are Israeli submarines that are armed with nukes.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like Isaiah 17 is a nuke over Damascus. Damascus shall be a ruinous heap. It's done in one day's time.
Well, Stuart, what's interesting, and I'd like your opinion on this, we mentioned this earlier, you brought it up, because of Trump's threat against Assad. I remember you said the scriptures talk about Isaiah 17 basically was because of the children of Israel. But I wonder, we've always thought Israel might do it, but what if Trump, because of the troubles in Israel and what's going on in the Middle East, if he winds up actually nuking Damascus and the U.S. does it?
Well, if you were looking at this militarily, Assad has invited in the Russians. He's invited in Iran. And Israel cannot survive either one of those in a war. All you got to do is look at Ezekiel 38:39. Taking out Assad and Syria to the insane ones might just decide, well, hey, this will eliminate all the problems. We get rid of Assad, and we get rid of Damascus all at the same time. And remember, Damascus has generally been where they've had all their chemical rockets and stuff like that. So they may just decide to go ahead and do it. But if you read Isaiah chapter 17, it appears as though that might be the Israeli mistake that the bots talked about. Cliff High and his bots talked about an Israeli mistake, and that was 2-3 years ago. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know when it was going to occur, but it was a mistake in strategy or a mistake in war. And if you read Isaiah chapter 17, it says that Israel waxes very, very lean, which means they suffered devastating losses. Now, who was that? Was that Soleimani who said we will attack Tel Aviv and Haifa?
Well, that's actually General Soleimani and also Nasrallah out of Lebanon saying that.
Oh, okay. Here's an interesting headline. Ahead of the Jewish New Year, the IDF launches exercises in the north. So military tension spiraled over the Syrian-Israeli border. Israeli forces on Tuesday began their third preparedness exercise in a month in case Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah decide to launch an assault on the Jewish New Year festival, which begins Sunday night, 9/11.
Yeah.
You suppose they know about this?
Oh,
I know Ananyo reads his Bible, so maybe he does.
Well,
and here's another headline.
Sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Netanyahu doesn't only read his Bible. Israel, according to sources I have, has incredible research in the Torah codes that's never been released, so they know some things.
Yeah, and it's very, very strange that the Bible codes for 2019, we're not hearing anything from the real rabbis that really do this. They went quiet, almost a year ago, basically.
Well, actually about 6 months ago, when they were doing 5778 Torah codes that reveal Messiah, or the coming of the Messiah, or Cyrus just before Messiah, that's when they began to do the 5779, which we begin, according to their calendar, this Sunday night.
Yep.
That's when they shut up.
Isn't that interesting? Here's another one. Iran deepens its military grip on Syria despite 200 Israeli airstrikes in the last 21 months. So they're not having any luck stopping Iran from all of this stuff in Syria. Assad just recently signed an agreement with Syria, or with Iran, rather. And here's a headline from Harold Turner, World News, breaking: 26 Russian airstrikes against Idlib. Syria so far today, Israeli fighter jet hit by Syrian missile, which you talked about. Then he goes into an update. Turkey continues to move units closer to the border and past bolstering its presence in the region. Israeli strikes Iranian targets. Russia conducts limited airstrikes and continues the Mediterranean sea drills. U.S. issues a warning to the Syrian government. USS Newport News attack submarine entered the Mediterranean yesterday. Turkey deploys a limited number of combat vessels to the Mediterranean. Syrian units continue massing near Idlib. Israeli fighter jet hit by it, and then we already talked about that. So this thing is ramping up, right?
Yeah.
Are we reading that right?
Oh, you're reading it right. If that's accurate information, and it seems to be, I've confirmed some of it with different sources, and actually after all of that data was when we began to hear about the Israeli planes over Lebanon and more explosions in Syria. So this is not let up.
So obviously Syria, Iran have to respond to Israel. They have to save face. After all, they've been telling their people and, calling Israel whatever they want to call her, and that they're going to take Israel out and let her be remembered no more. You can't be making comments like that and then be attacked repeatedly without, I would think, showing some muscle, which is Daniel chapter 8.
Well,
where they just suddenly, and without any warning, go forth. And you have mentioned before that Saudi Arabia is in on this thing with Israel, and part of that thing on Daniel 8 appears to be an attack on Saudi Arabia as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, something that's very interesting, Stuart, you're talking about them firing back. I'm wondering if Israel is literally trying to preempt the missile strike on them, because remember a couple of days ago, according to Hal Turner crew, a lot of the Hamas commanders and all had gone underground and gone dark, and they only do that just before a missile attack begins. So is it by chance that maybe Gaza, the Hamas, and then the Iranians and Hezbollah and Lebanon and the Syrians are planning on a massive missile attack, and these new drills in northern Israel and attacks are to preempt that or stop it?
I would think so. I remember Bibi Netanyahu claimed that they were going to fight a war, and it was going to be a three-front war. So he's right. This is what it's going to be. Before we close, we only got a minute or so left. False flag attack, folks. West Virginia, September 8th. Larry mentioned this. And Indiana, September 10th through the 12th. Nuclear, biological, chemical attack. Actors are needed. It's an advertisement in a magazine. So it's a false flag alert. And what's interesting is that it's on Virginia and in Indiana. So we'll just have to watch and see what is actually coming down the pike. It does not look good, though. Let's put it that way. What other comments do you have? We got about 90 seconds left, Larry.
Well, I was just going to mention a lot of us have been having problems with our computers, the internet. The censorship is incredible. If people are waiting to read or see what we're telling people on mainstream media in America, they can forget it. It's just nothing but total chaos on the news. So stay tuned to us, or stay tuned to the sources we give you, or shortwave, or some of the Middle East news, and be wary.
Yeah, we're not being told about any of this war over there. And this is serious, and it can go to World War III almost overnight. And we are coming up on 9/11, and again, I warn everyone, this is a real serious time. 9/11 appears to be it. And if not it, it's going to be very, very close. At the most, we would have another year. And I just don't see that. I think we're heading in. Everything looks like it. And there's a fellow that's done a lot of work on Strong's numbers. It comes to the 9/11 all the time, no matter which way it goes. So anyway, folks, thanks a lot, Larry, for coming on. And it's a heads up, folks. And if something very serious happens, we'll try and get on. We are being censored. So anyway, good night, take care, and the Lord willing, we'll be back on.